to spend this time with you today. I have been um, working on and presenting on COVID since I think the first couple of weeks. I think my first webinar was in April. So thinking very deeply and maintaining my private practice online. And I want to share some of my thoughts today about how it is that we might want to transition from COVID, from the pandemic, and coming out of it to an uncertain future world of work.
Can I turn on my video?
And really, what I think is the absolute most important thing is what best serves our clients. If you are a tweeter, if you want to tweet out anything that stands out to you today, at Global Career Guy is certainly something I would appreciate creating some energy around on Twitter. And without further ado, let's jump in. And so here is what I am most concerned about in my work today is both. I consider myself a practitioner scholar. And so I am a professor. I still do career research, but I spend a day and a half a week in private practice, career focused, and it's really what drives the engine for me. It drives my research questions, it drives my teaching, and it really drives sort of this public intellectual influencer type work that I'm trying to do. And so, what I'm most concerned about at the practitioner level is how we humans work. And I don't mean employment work, I mean how our neurobiology impacts the way we travel through this life, this world, and our careers. And so I ask questions in my practice and in my research like, what orients us? What provides the compass of our life and of our decisions and of our career decision? What awakens us? Which gives us new perspective, new ideas, what makes us feel alive inside? Okay, what motivates us? I'm really pivoting away from this old idea that we're about to experience again with the new year of New Year's resolutions, and that willpower is an effective tool to accomplish personal goals. Uh, Using New Year's resolutions as the example, only 8% of New Year's resolutions remain intact at the end of the year that they're made, and 25% of them are gone by mid January. And so this idea of set a goal and then gut it out, grind it out, use our willpower to achieve it. The science shows that that's not the most effective way or even an effective way to help people accomplish what they want. And then in my therapy practice as an existential therapist, I'm always asking the questions of what are we looking for? Now, what you'll see in this picture is a book from 1895 by Professor W.G. Alexander. And he had pandemic beard. I have pandemic hair. So I figured this particular awesome picture, I love this pic, might be a good picture for this particular slide. Now, what we're going to do today is I'm going to try to be helpful to you as a career practitioner. I'm going to actually demonstrate a technique that I've designed. I'm going to walk through 5 to 6 different components of how to adapt our career practice for the current circumstances. So, at the very most, what I want this to be is practical for you. I want it to be something that you can see using in your counseling practice, your career coaching practice, whatever it is that you do to help people find life and career fulfillment. And that's why I've asked Vera to act as my co host. So please use the chat box, questions, ideas, comments. I trust her completely to know when to jump in and offer ideas in the moment that things are unfolding so that we can really talk about these ideas in context. Okay. So I named this from frightening to fierce. And so why fierce? We have a few thousand years of philosophy. We have a couple hundred years almost of psychological research. And I think fierce because sometimes we all get provoked by life. And so right now we're being provoked in our career development by this pandemic. We're being provoked by the changing economy. We're being provoked by the changing world of work. These are very provocative things, and we are still built as biological animals to have a stimulus response or to have a response to stimuli. And so we Yes, you and I sitting here are being provoked by this and are responding to this in different ways. And our clients are as well. So this gets into the connection between mental health and career development, but there is a lot of psychological price to pay for this grand global talked about greatly uncertainty that we have in the world, let alone the world of work. Now, I think it's important that clients remember that we have been here before. We have gone through historical periods of time where many more people were harmed, where much more uncertainty can happen. I remember, the Cold War, World War II, the First World War, the Civil War in this country. We've been through worse diseases before. We've been through polio, tuberculosis, measles, the 1918 pandemic. Okay. So there is something in us where we have built up coping mechanisms and tolerance for this. And so one of the things that we have to be able to do with our clients and not force them, but help them to give up the idea of easy and focus on the idea of possible. Because we are empowered when we are on a pathway to mastery. Mark Savickas' most famous quote is, "We are all trying to actively master what we once passively suffered." I think that resonates so much with counselors and clients because there is a biological truth in that. Okay. We need to feel like we are on a pathway to mastery in the things in our lives that we can control. I don't think it's an accident that our oldest Stoic philosophers, many of them were either enslaved or ostracized from their communities or during Roman times. I don't think it's an accident that so many of our existential philosophers, were interned in concentration camps during World War II. Okay. The hardness, the difficultness of life happens. What we need to do is help clients get to the point where they realize that history has happened and the future is happening. Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about some techniques to prime students for that before talking about how I want us to reframe this idea of VUCA that we were very obsessed with before the pandemic so that it's more helpful for clients. And Vera, this is that pause just in case anyone has anything that they wanted to introduce into the conversation.
Not so far, thank you.
Not so far. We got a bunch of wallflowers out there. That's okay. Eventually, someone's going to break the ice and we're going to have a rich conversation. Okay. So I want to talk about first a couple of things that I've developed in my practice, and this is the brand new one on grounding. And so grounding with electricity is to provide a safe way to discharge electrical energy. Okay. And so when you think about jumping your car battery, the black little thing that you have to clip to something is to ground the electricity so that you don't get shocked. And the red one is the one that has the electrical current going through that's going to help your battery recharge. Now, a lot of times during this pandemic, I'll be on my computer screen with my clients, and they won't be yet prepared to do career work. Okay. I have quite a few clients that have an ADD or ADHD diagnosis, both adolescent, young adult, and middle-aged adults. Okay. There's a lot of anxiety right now, obviously, for the reasons of the circumstances that we're in. It might be a bad event that happened that day, or honestly, it might just be Zoom fatigue. And so the first core belief I have is that it doesn't make sense to try to do the work if the person isn't ready to get to work. Okay. It's sort of like the old idea for those of you that went through counseling programs. There's no sense in employing a counseling technique to expect therapeutic change until you have a trusting, working relationship, or what we would call a therapeutic alliance. And so I, as a counselor or a coach, I have to see whether or not the client is grounded enough in the moment through a computer screen. Now, many of you might practice techniques such as guided imagery or maybe box breathing. I've developed one through the pandemic that I call 321 D to P. And D to P stands from distance to proximity. And so I have a little LinkedIn tab there. You can't click on it, but I just posted a short article on this technique, attributing it to the New York Career Development Association on LinkedIn about 20 minutes ago now. So you can go there and engage with me on LinkedIn. We can connect on LinkedIn and you can download a copy of this article. Hey, Vera, are you out there?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, so I warned Vera that I was going to ask her to do a short role play with me, but did I tell you anything about what we were going to do?
Not a thing.
Not a thing. Vera, have you ever felt anxious or unfocused in your life?
Pretty much every day of my life.
Pretty much every day. So let's give this a shot right now. We'll do a little demonstration.
Okay,
I want to try this technique I've developed called 3-2-1 D to P. Would it be okay if we tried something new right now?
of course.
Okay. So first of all, just sit comfortably in your chair and just take a deep breath with me. I'm going to let you hear mine, and hopefully I could hear yours too. And so I want you to, we're going to be silent for a minute, and I want you to tell me 3 things that you hear. And I want you to start with the thing that you hear that's furthest from you. So it might be something outside, and then a second thing that's closer to you. It might be something that's in your home. And then the third thing is something closest to you, and it might be something in the room that you're in.
Okay. Furthest from me is my husband eating something downstairs. I hear clanging of utensils in a bowl. Second closest is I have a sound machine outside of the door where my office is, so I'm hearing that.
Hmm.
And um, closest to me is, of course, the audio coming from my computer.
Great, great. Thank you. Thank you. Another deep breath with me. And so now I want you to look around the room that you're in, and I want you to tell me 2 things that you see. The first thing is the thing that's furthest from you that you notice with your eyes. And then the second is the thing that's closest to you, maybe even at the desk that you're sitting at.
Furthest would be the window opposite me that points to outside, and closest to me is a crystal that I hold in my hand.
Ah, and like usual, since I've known you so long, Vera, you've already worked ahead. Um, but for the third thing then is I want you to reach out and find one thing to touch that's very near to you. And if it could be something that provides you some sense of comfort while you're either touching it or holding it.
Yeah, can I use the same?
You absolutely can, Vera.
Oh, yeah, I like to fidget sometimes, and
Yeah.
crystals are also calming. It has a good energy to it, so that's something.
Yeah, yeah. And so for the rest of this, since you have a role to play in this talk, you might want to keep the crystal nearby. And if you ever feel like you need to refocus or if you need to discharge some anxiety, you're going to have that crystal right there beside you
Right.
throughout the rest of our time together today. Okay.
Fantastic. Yeah.
So I'm going to take about 20 seconds. I would like as many people to throw in the chat out of 46 or 48 of us. What was your take on what just happened? Just throw some ideas in the chat on your observations. I'm an old soul, so you can certainly say things that you didn't like about it, things that didn't work. You can guess what impact that may have had on Vera. But let's get some ideas generated in the chat. And I'm going to try to take a look at the chat while I do this.
Okay. Well, I was going to share with you, there's a couple of things that have come through.
Great.
Frank asked, what if the clients do not have something at their desk? What if it's too far away?
Awesome, Frank. Thank you so much. And Frank, I know Frank from a while back at NCDA. I let clients get up and go get something.
Mhm.
You know, again, like I'm trying to make things immediate so that clients feel focused, centered, and less anxious. And I'm never going to get in the way of their interpretation of the most important thing to do that.
Yeah. A lot of people are
Oh,
saying
yeah.
that this is
Yeah.
helpful, helps clients to get present. It's
Yeah.
something they could really use with their students. The breath at the beginning and between each step is helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mindfulness, centering, transition. It's a great transition activity.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. Oh, hey, an old student of mine came in with avoiding cognitive distractions. So, hello, Rasha.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, and the other thing that I do, and this is all anecdotal, but you've noticed that each of the prompts start distally, far away, and work the client's perception closer. And by the end, each one brought you a step closer to here and now, to sitting in this room at this time where you're sitting. And I personally really love sort of the feel of that point too, of recognizing it. Vera, for you personally, like, did you notice any changes in yourself? Like, do you
You know,
feel more centered or?
I like to use the phrase that helped me be where my feet are, because
Ah, yeah.
I tend to be in my head a lot about things, and so I live in my head more than I do in my body. So this really helped me bring the space around me back to,
Hmm.
to my immediate surroundings and my
Yeah.
immediate reality. And it was calming to not focus on all the things that are happening in the world and in my head and work and all those
Yeah.
things. Just
Yep.
focus on this one little crystal in my hand. That was
Yep.
really helpful.
Yeah. And I see Mary's making the point that it can be practiced with all five senses. And so
Yeah.
I've distilled it down to these because I mean, the sense of taste, of course, I don't know the conditions of the room or where things are, or even if someone has enough food in the house. But I also wanted to shorten it up because of it being in the Zoom environment. So for me, there was an efficiency element, but absolutely this comes to, this is just my take on some mindfulness techniques. I didn't make up all of the techniques. I think the big thing for me was starting far and bringing near, helping a client travel a pathway in a virtual landscape is something that I've found very fulfilling in my practice. I'm really excited to use this. And again, the LinkedIn in the bottom is the reminder of please connect with me on LinkedIn if you're not already. And I just posted a short article describing this in more depth. I think it's like 5 paragraphs long on LinkedIn about 20 minutes ago. So if we're not connected, connect, and you'll be able to download the article just as a reminder. The last thing I'll say about this is I don't, sometimes I'll use this not because the client seems to be emotionally escalated or unfocused, but because I know that we're going to be doing some tough work today. And so if Vera were to come to me, um, and she seems fine, right? But I know that she's really anxious socially, and that we're going to do role playing of interviewing today, and that's going to really spike her anxiety. I might even use this as a preventative measure, right? As a preventative measure. Okay. And just real quick, at the point in the counseling relationship, would this be best integrated? And Angel, I think that's a great question. And Vera, just so you know, I'm closing the chat now so I can stay focused. Angel, I think I trust you as a clinician. Um, there are too many variables. Let me back up a little bit. I do a lot of clinical supervision in my private practice right now. I'd say more than 50% of my time is career focused clinical supervision with pre-licensed therapists from Canada and the United States. And I'm growing to think that therapy is so much more about pace and timing than it is about technique. And so I would never get in the way of your clinical judgment with a client that I've never met and say, you should use it now, or you should use it now, or you should use it at this point. Um, as you're developing the trusting relationship to do good work, you'll get to know the rhythms of your client. You'll get to observe, particularly if they're using video, which not all clients do. Um, you might have to listen for things in their voice of what is their emotional state today compared to the rhythm of their emotional states over time. And so I would use this for a day when they're particularly emotionally escalated or elevated and aren't able to focus. I use this if they have a anxiety or ADD or ADHD diagnosis, and I know that we need to do some different things to help them be present enough to do the good work. And as I said before, I do it if I know that I'm priming a particularly difficult session for the client that day. Okay. All right, so that's the one type of grounding I want to focus on. The other, and I have an article in Sarik's newsletter in Canada, and I can send that link to Vera to be sent out as a follow-up on what I call the 2 essential questions of career work. And so not only do I want to ground my clients in the moment to do good work with me, I also overall want to ground them in their life to make career decisions. Okay. So question 1, and I ask this at intake. I always ask it verbally with the client, not in written form. And the question is what are the most important day-to-day relationships in your life? Now, if you have a pen and paper, I would write down the names of people, which is what I do in my clinical notes. And the day-to-day relationship, that doesn't mean that you see them or speak to them every day. That means that they're woven into the day-to-day pattern of your life. And so one way to think about this is who are you texting or calling if something really tremendous or really bad were to happen in your life today? Who are the human beings that are the touchstone relationships in your life? And I want to, in the beginning, get their names and the relationship. Vera Chapman, my bestie in career development, right? So on and so forth. My spouse, okay? Some people have said the names of their pets, and that's fine. I'm not taking that away from them. Now, what's going to happen with the two questions is I pocket them until the right time in the counseling relationship. And so if someone is making a career decision, and we've done the traditional career decision making processes, these cognitive development processes, these decision making models, I want to use this as a mirror to reflect on those decisions. So if you took job A, how would that impact your relationship with Vera? Would you still have the time? Would you still have the connection? Okay. And so we're reflecting our career development on our life design, which is a piece that I think that we forgot about in the late 20th century. We started to get like way into the decision-making space and less into the context of this is broader and a big piece of your life type space. The second question then is, what are the most important day-to-day behaviors in your life? Now, two notes on this. One is a lot of clients will name things they do with people, which is the answer to the relationship question. Okay. And two is in my mind, these are better framed as the behaviors that are your best self days. Okay. So what are the kind of answers that I get here, right? Daily prayer or meditation, daily getting outside or exercise, daily journaling. Okay. Daily, for me, I have two that I've designed into my life. I very mindfully put both of my feet on the floor every morning when I wake up and give thanks that I'm up and about again. And in my house, I'm the early bird. So I love grinding the beans and making the cup of coffee for my household as I get up early, because I know that the smell and the coffee is going to be prepared for my spouse when she gets out of bed, usually a couple hours after me. Okay. I meditate each day, morning and evening. I do a style of stoic meditation for the last few years. I walk or exercise every day since the pandemic started. So I'm building in these behaviors. And again, the reflective question when we come to a career decision, we're not saying don't make the career choice, but let's reflect it. How will that impact the best day-to-day behaviors that are just for you in your life, that make your life on a pathway to a good life for you or the best life you can live? So I collect these during a verbal intake. I keep them at the top of my case notes, the way I do my case notes, and then they are waiting at the ready for the right timing to bring them back in to reflect the career decision-making process on the life design sort of process. And so these 2 points of grounding then I think are important to be aware of both during this pandemic, but we got chaos coming, right? We have a lot of uncertainty coming out of this pandemic, and our clients may not be able to articulate it the way we do, but they know about it. They feel it, right? And so it's baked into their physiology. We can articulate it, but the question then becomes, how do we help them with this? And so the first two things I want to do is focus on these two ways of grounding, and then I'm going to transition here to talk about 4 other things that I think that we can do. Thoughts, comments, questions, or concerns for the good of the group can go ahead and go into the chat. I'll take a brief 20-minute pause. Everyone, if you don't have a thought or question, just stand up right now. Let's get a good stretch in. Oh boy, 20 minutes listening to the dulcet sounds of my voice can be a lot for some people. I'll click the chat back open. Oh, thank you so much, Kate, for getting my back. I had already closed and didn't see that that someone had asked for the LinkedIn link. It'll also be at the end of the presentation. Okay, so let's put a pin in that. These ideas of grounding techniques, both in a moment and broader. Of course, I don't get to write the rules of the universe. There are a bazillion grounding techniques out there. These are just the ones that I personally have developed for my practice and I'm sharing with the profession. As one of my great multicultural professors, Dr. Keith Wilson, used to say, my techniques are neither right or wrong, good or bad, they're just different, or maybe not even that different in this case. Okay, so now I want to talk about the scary stuff out there, the frightening stuff. So I'm going to guess that almost everyone on here has heard the acronym VUCA before, because it seems like that it was in almost every newsletter publication, almost every um, conference. There were a couple of things focused on VUCA. It stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And coming into the pandemic for a couple of years beforehand, um, it was this idea of here is the description of the world of work out there. Here is how we can use these descriptors to describe it. And for me, the basic question is how is that helpful to my clients? Even for me to hold these ideas of, well, we got to
Hello,
get ready
Amy.
for
How are you?
Hello? Oh, sorry. We got to get ready for volatility. So it can be true and also unhelpful if we don't do something to adapt. Okay. So I really want to talk about how we can shift the VUCA from the scary acronym to one that might be a little bit more helpful for clients. And so what does this scariness do? It brings stress and anxiety and mental health issues. It causes a lot of clients to become more self-isolated, particularly with the pandemic. But unemployment, underemployment, and employment uncertainty tend to be very isolating events to individual clients. It's really easy to get in that shame space. Okay. And then, of course, the long-term impact of this is just exhaustion. Okay. People just falling apart physically, spiritually, and mentally because of the scariness of this future world of work. And so I want to give them an antidote to VUCA in my practice. And I'm going to use the same acronym and I want to tackle it in the following way. I want to take on volatility with this idea of velocity. And so velocity as a scientific term is speed or direction with speed. And I often think of the idea of a vector. And so we don't know what the jobs are of the future, but we know the direction that our clients want to go in based on their skills, their experiences, their personality dispositions, their values, okay, their lifestyle needs. So we can prepare for something without knowing exactly what that something is. Okay. So I want to reframe, and a lot of what I talk about is a reframe, this idea from, yeah, we don't know what the future is going to look like, to you can determine the direction that you want to go in the future, and we can still go there, okay, with a sense of presence, with a sense of power, okay. So I see a lot of career coaches and career counselors, the thing to do during the pandemic is to polish up your LinkedIn profile. Well, then what? What does LinkedIn as a static thing do to it? I like to talk to clients of after we polish it up, what is the plan for it? What is the engagement model that we're going to talk about with our LinkedIn profile or with our social media presence or anything like that? Okay. Now, two pieces to this. One is, as most people would say, having this is a good strategy on social media, this engagement model versus this polish and let it sit there model. But I do it because it's better for the human animal that is my client. Again, it gets back to that idea of, history happened, the future is happening. It has movement to it. Okay. This idea that if we're on a pathway to mastery, we're designed to feel better about where we're going. And so I'm going to give you, since we're still in the pandemic environment, a social media example of each of these. A lot of people know who Gary Vee is, or Gary Vaynerchuk. He's I think still the #1 ranked social media influencer in the world. I spent about 3 months studying him pretty closely before I launched my Global Career Guy brand. Um, and this guy just floods the zone, as we used to say in basketball, with content. He has varied kinds of content. He's on different spaces. Some of it has no sort of purpose that you can see. Other of it has purpose that you can see. But he created velocity with his social media presence. Now, my clients don't need to become Gary Vaynerchuk, but I want to talk to them about like the energy that they're putting into their presence as sort of the context for the decisions that we make. Okay. The next one is we talk a lot about uncertainty, and there certainly is a great amount of uncertainty in the future world of work. And again, we're going to need to deal with that at the time that we need to deal with that. That might be today, that might be 6 months into the future. A lot of my clients, particularly those transitioning out of community college with associate's degrees or university, they're going back to work as a fry cook at a diner, or they're going back to work at the big box store. That's still, that's increasing the size of the delivery department. So there's a lot of return to what was stable, because of the pause point of this uncertain future. So what are some of the things that we can feel that are good for the client? And here I really like to focus on uniqueness, okay, on unorthodoxy. So if this job market does open up in the future, like, what's your special sauce? Okay, what's the special ingredient in you in this vector that we've lined out? Thinking of a client right now who has an associate's degree in IT. It's actually the client that's back working um, in a food service environment, and then thinking about getting a bachelor's degree now in internet or digital security. Okay, and so we look at that pathway. The question's still going to be, what makes you stand out once you get that bachelor's degree? But we have enough of a base right now to think about working on, well, what makes you stand out now? What's the unique brand, idea, or proposition that we're going to develop the whole way through this degree program? Okay, so again, we think that this is a good strategy as we think about branding. But I want to focus on the fact that this is a good idea for the client, for the way that we're built, on something that we can think about as our future, something that is happening now pointed towards a future. Okay. And so I always use this example, this Roger Wakefield guy. I don't know him, but he is a plumber, and he is what I would call, if I had a picture of a plumber in my mind, the mustache would definitely be part of it. But he has this whole YouTube channel about plumbing. He's very passionate about it. He can point to it in his business. It is artifacts and evidence of what he can do. Okay. So we're developing something during this natural pause point in our career development process. That doesn't mean we're not job searching. It doesn't mean that we're not doing the LinkedIn polish, but it means that we have something deeper and about us that we're doing too, because it can really, for a lot of clients, feel like screaming into the void right now. It can feel like, for a lot of clients, should I give up what I've been working for 4 years in college, or for the last 10 years of my career, and make the pivot to a career that I'm going to guess will be there in the future, or to the job that is available to me in the current economic environment? And so
Ryan,
these are, yeah,
we have a question from
sure,
Heidi. Um,
yeah.
Speaking of unorthodoxy, does that also include outside the box thinking to generate new opportunities?
Depends on the client, right? Right. So unorthodoxy has to do with getting to know the client at their best self level. Okay. And so absolutely outside of the box thinking. One of the videos I did a long time ago that created a great conversation was letting the client's voice lead. Okay. I think another thing that has happened in the field of career development and coaching is that we've really taken on the expert mantle where we really think that we have this plan to tell clients what to do. And part of our problem right now is that the world has changed and the world of work has changed so much that those old plans we fear may not be as useful as they used to be. Well, if we let the client's voice lead, right, we can support them with our knowledge and our expertise. But for me, a lot of it just depends on the client and where they go. There are people that don't want to become unorthodox. That's fine. But what's going to make you special in your career field of choice? If I had, if you want to be an accountant and I have 20 accountants and I need to pick one for a special project, what would be the reason that you would get picked for that project? What is the special sauce that you have? And so one of the problems with unorthodoxy is it does make us think like glitter and sort of show offedness, and it doesn't have to be that way. It can really be just about drilling down on these things that you're going to carry with you, regardless of where you go. Values is what we traditionally talk about that. I tend to focus more of it on brand development now. Okay. All right. Third one of these, we're getting close to the end. So we want to take on complexity with creativity. George Bernard Saul says, some people see things as they are and say, why? I dream of things that never were and say, why not? And so again, this gets into that history has happened, the future is happening sort of thing. Okay. We need to help our clients not envision a career goal, but almost a career vector or a career field. Okay. Never asking a client, what do you want to do, but what do you want to do next? By adding that one word, we are planting the seed of there's going to be a next and a next and a next and a next and a next. Okay. And so this mindset of creativity, again, doesn't mean that we're pushing everyone into the arts or some sort of stereotypical thing. It really means of we're going to have to be generative for the rest of our careers. All of us. I share that with my clients. What I have today as a professor and as global career guy has almost zero chance of being a carbon copy of what you'll see from me 5 years from now. And I can choose to see that as super exciting, or I can choose to see that as super daunting. What we know from psychological research is those that can find a way to find it somewhat to super exciting are going to do a lot better in accomplishing their goals, are going to feel more satisfied with their work life, and are going to feel more satisfied with their overall life. Okay. This is my good friend, Cole, who is a therapist and a photographer. She's given me permission to share this. So she became semi-famous in Ottawa, Canada, for taking pictures of all of the live bands that played, like press pass and everything, from just taking pictures with her phone to building up to using professional camera lenses. What did the pandemic do to that part of her? Shut it down. For the first time in her life, she started to do photo series of herself. She had never publicly posted pictures before, and now has these entire series of herself that are not only getting her out there and getting her the same level of appreciation, but are creating new opportunities now for different types of photography. And if I would say, have given her a personal awakening. It was a big step, I think, for her to put herself out there as the subject of her photography versus her being the one behind the camera every time. This creativity, it can be small things because there are small shifts that we can make to us that look small from the outside and can be huge on the inside. The last one is ambiguity. And for me, this is just a tonal thing, but I really want to talk about your future awesomeness. I don't want to talk about getting the job. I don't want to talk about surviving the pandemic. We will do those things together. But if we're not gutting it out right now during the hard times without a picture of hope for a good life for ourselves in the future, I'm not sure that I see the point. And of course, we have hope action theory that tells us this. We have positive psychology that tells us this. We have thousands of years of philosophy that tells us this. Coincidentally, REBT, those of you that are in the cognitive tree, Albert Ellis totally took that straight out of Stoic philosophy, which is thousands of years old. Okay. So I want to do the hard work today. I'm never going to not acknowledge that this is hard. But my job is to help you feel that it's hard, but then pivot to a better future. This is my good friend and my past career coach, Allie Breen. She is a career coach and a digital media coach. And this is not everyone's website, right? That does that kind of feel. So she has done an amazing job, in my opinion, of embracing her sense of awesomeness. Does that mean she has all the clients she needs at every time? No. Does that mean that her life as an entrepreneur doesn't have waves? No. But she has that consistent thread of embracing her awesomeness as she works herself through the hard times. Also have permission from Allie to share her website and tell a little bit of her story. So in the end, this VUCA stuff sounds scary. And we don't want to turn away from the scariness. We want to acknowledge it, but we want to do so with a belief that there's something better, that we are taking steps, even small steps towards better, so that the stress can turn into meaningful relationships, the loneliness can turn into caring companionship, and the exhaustion can turn into a future picture of a good life that I'm going to live for me. The Brian Hutchison version of a good life is out there. And even though this has been, excuse my language, a hell of a 9 months, I'm in double digit family members who have a COVID diagnosis, and I've lost 2. I've had now 3 hospitalized that I haven't lost, including the 2, right? It's not been easy for any of us. But getting through has to have something on the other side. Running the marathon, the pain of training, the pain of running that race has to have that picture of the finish line to make the pain worth it. And I find this, and it's nuanced, right? I don't want to be spreading unicorns and rainbows on my clients if they're miserable. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about meeting them where they're at, assessing what they need in the moment, but using the right timing to pivot to this idea of hope in the future. And so the question really becomes, what are we unlocking in our clients? I'm not unlocking a career decision. I'm not unlocking prestige or income. I'm unlocking the design of their life and the role that career, and the research on this is clear, is inextricably linked to the quality of their life. And the decisions that unlock that aren't what job, but they're how does this job impact the important things in my life? How does it impact my relationships that matter day to day? How does it impact the behaviors that make me good for myself day to day? And so that's what I have to say today. I left 11 minutes, which for me feels like a great victory. I would love to have this conversation. And Vera, I forgot to hit record. So unless you did, we just lied to them.
I did. A little late, but I did. So
You know me so well.
we'll be able to put this on YouTube. We did get a question of somebody who was like, what did he just say? I know it's hard to keep up with the greatness in this conversation. Well,
I try not to go too fast, but I do get excited about this stuff sometimes.
You're fine. I did have a question earlier that I wanted to bring up. If I can just get to it. Lisa asked, and this was before VUCA when we were talking about the grounding technique.
Yeah.
You were asking about relationships and things like that. She said, what if your client is not satisfied or, as you mentioned, can't articulate these things? I could envision people thinking they should answer the question as a I should, when you ask a relationship, for instance.
Yeah, and so this is why I never do it in the written intake form. It's why I always do it verbally, because I think that we need our coaching or our counseling skills to be available to us if and when that does happen. Okay. And so I'm going to ask the question because I believe that this is the way that we are biologically built, that we are relational creatures. I think the science on that is pretty clear. And that if they can't name these relationships, that's probably going to be important in the work that I have to do with them. So if it's career coaching, you're probably not going to dig into relationship work, even if they're for a career coaching concern. If it's career counseling, I may dig into a relationship work, because I'm qualified to do that, and it is linked to their career development. Okay. And so how do you anytime that you take a risk or you choose an intervention in your practice, you should know how to back out of that successfully in your own style.
Mm.
Okay. And so for me, it depends on the client. I have a couple of different tools in the toolbox, but just thinking out loud, it might be, I ask this question of a lot of people, and for many, it is hard to know who the day-to-day people is. Um, it seems like you're struggling with it.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, where we go from there really has to do a lot with our style, our therapeutic style, or our coaching style, and our choices that we have available to us. So I always acknowledge it, and I always let the client lead. Now, I might come up with, not everyone picks people that they actually have a relation, the first type of relationship in our mind that we might think of. Some people, it's listening to a podcast with someone every day that they really connect to. Some people, it's their pets. Some people, it's just doing a favor for someone, even if they don't know it. And so I think that there are many kinds of relationships. What I'm interested in is how you have value in different types of relationships in your life. And again, this is data collection. This is part of an assessment, not I'm telling you how to do things.
Brian, you've used the phrase "let the client lead" a couple of times now, and that video you did that's on your website and YouTube channel is one of my favorites. I use it in my career counseling class every time I teach it. Can you just briefly summarize for folks what you mean by that? Because I think it's so powerful, the language.
Yeah, so we want to use our models and our processes and our steps, but I think that we have to do everything really tentatively, because, like, I always think, so I work with a lot of women, right? I'm a guy. Like, I recognize that there is a patriarchy and sexism and all of these factors in the world of work. I can recognize them, I can see them. Who am I to tell you, Vera, how to cope with them? Because I don't have access to that experience. I have a belief that that experience is unique, is something that is almost everywhere, and is something that really needs to be tackled for positive career development. And I feel like I've helped many women do that tackling. But if I don't let you as a client lead as the experiencer of those things, I spent most of my years in St. Louis, Missouri, working in a poor Black community, 99 point something percent African American. Again, I am very knowledgeable with book learning about racism and structural racism and all of these things. I know the history of St. Louis to the point where I've lectured on it many times. But who the heck am I to tell an African American client what it's like to exist in this country and in this world of work as a person of color? So the knowledge piece is there, and it helps to know the steps of the processes and to use it as a guide. But I think humility has to be there as well. And there are just barriers to my existence, to my identity, that keep me from being able to knowingly help people, okay, without letting them lead first. And I just think it's better practice.
Right.
Okay. Um, I I want to feel unique in my own therapy and in my own coaching. I am not. I know that, but I want to at least feel heard enough to think that the person helping me is adapting based on the uniqueness that I feel.
Right.
Okay. the other piece of that is overlooking key moments, right? And so, I see this in my supervision practice, live supervision quite a bit, where it's like the signs are there that the client isn't grounded to do this work. And particularly newer coaches and counselors will just sort of go straight ahead and push through it. And the client will follow you.
Mhm.
They will do their best, despite their escalation of emotions or unfocusedness, to perform for you. But in the end, that's not really the best work that you can provide for them. Okay. And again, it might just be as simple as letting it, take a moment. Take a moment. Yeah, Sherry. So the FCD, I mean, I would think that any curriculum approach to training would absolutely have to have an effective listening and an empathy component to it. Um, I agree. I agree. Yes, and I've helped teach the FCD curriculum a time or two. So.
Brian, how does this information look differently when you're presenting and working with classes in a school at the middle school and high school level?
Mm. Yeah, so it's the same, but it's developmentally different, right? And so, like, if we look at middle and high school, um, we look at moral development, cognitive development, and physical development. And so, autonomy is a big developmental hurdle in those age groups, right? Exploring autonomy in early middle school, and then sort of really getting comfortable with your sense of autonomy, usually by the end of high school, and particularly into the first couple of years post high school. So, letting them lead is still important because that allows them to play with these ideas of personhood, identity, and autonomy. Okay. Um, Presenting the world of work, the VUCA piece, with there are things that you can do with it, is especially important for that age group because they haven't developed all of the cognitive processes yet to effectively self-manage if things aren't presented in a way where things are possible, right? Like at that age, possibility is an important part of the potion. And boy, was that a lot of P's in one little phrase. Hashtag trademark, possibility is an important part of the, yeah, I can't even say it twice. But so for me, a lot of what we do in career development is pretty uniform. It's different because of developmental stage of life, but also I think context makes it different. So, working with someone, adult or child, that only knows a blue collar, working poor existence has to be fundamentally different than working with someone who comes from privilege and is working in white collar jobs. Okay. So the goals are similar, the processes are similar to the same, but the context is very different. So how are we adapting to that context without, I would add, belittling the people who are historically marginalized by their identity or their context as well, right? So I think we see this a lot with STEM, right? Like we drive these programs. I was just talking to someone Monday, which I think was yesterday, about STEM transition for students of color into higher education. Okay, well the needs and the processes for a person of privilege coming in versus not a person of privilege are fundamentally the same if you were to outline them, but there's extreme differences in context. So did I have access to AP courses? Did I have the appropriate chemistry courses? Was the rigor such that it prepared me for higher education? And so just treating them as the same in the treatment does a disservice. Um, Sort of paternalizing them also does a disservice. So how do we empower them while acknowledging the differentiation that is there? I feel like that wasn't my best answer, so help me if that was confusing.
That was helpful. We are nearing the end of the hour, so I just want to make sure everybody saw in the chat that I'm requesting, if you do want CEUs for attending today, that you please email NYCDA@gmail.com and let me know your first and last name as you'd like it to appear on the certificate. I'm not automatically going to send it out to everybody. If you want it, please email me and then I will get it right to you.
And can I make two quick announcements, Vera?
Yes, absolutely. And I also wanted to give one more chance for people with burning questions. Put it in the chat right before we wrap up.
So you'll see that there's a bit.ly on the screen right now that if you were to copy, I'm going to start a quarterly newsletter as Global Career Guy here in January. And in that, I'm going to do a couple of things. I'm going to talk about my stuff very briefly, but each issue, I'm going to highlight a career professional from a different country and point you towards their work. I do this in companionship with a column that I have in a newsletter that Vera is the editor of. But this will point you more to like social media, YouTube, and stuff like that. And at times it'll even be some of the same people. The second announcement would be is I have my own advanced credential, ACF 21, and I'm running a cohort in January 12th it starts, to get that credential, which is worth 30 CEUs. And we're doing that through the New Jersey Career Development Association, who is partnering with the Pennsylvania Career Development Association and is actually talking to Vera to possibly partner as well with the New York Career Development Association. So feel free to contact me via email or on any social media about anything, but particularly about those couple of things if you have questions.
All right, we're getting some really good feedback. Thank you, Brian, for your time and expertise today. I feel like I could listen to you all day. I know others wish we had more time today. We will put this recording up within the next week or so on YouTube. And if you have any questions, please do find Brian on LinkedIn. The New York State Career Development Association also has a website. You can find us by the Gmail account I shared. If you have any questions on how we can support your work here in New York State. And we just really are very thankful that you spent your time with us today.
Yeah, thank you all so much. I'm so grateful that for your interest, and I'm at a stage of my career development where I love engaging just as part of community. So I will get back to you and engage with you with any questions or conversations that you might want to have.
Fantastic.
Cool.
All
Be
right.
well, everyone. Be safe, be well.
We'll wrap this up for today. Thank you so much. Take care. Thank you, Brian.
Yep. Vera, do you want to say on and say goodbye, just the two of us after everyone goes?
Yes, we'll have our bestie moment.
Cool.